Hello everyone. This is Krishanu Goswami and welcome to the Friday evening's talk with Amit. Our today's subject is quantum parenting. Now I am not sure whether you are familiar with such a term. Here, apparently the quantum is used as an adjective. So you have probably come across various things, bad parenting, good parenting, this parenting and that parenting. But quantum parenting, I am not sure whether it is there in your vocabulary yet. So I'd like to know from Amit as well as our guest today whether this phrase is actually appropriate. So first, let us go to Amit.
Hello, everyone.
How are you?
I'm good.
Well, can we say quantum good? Is it an appropriate phrase?
Yes, although I usually use it like this quantum well being.
Okay. All right. So I'll now quickly introduce our today's guest. Our today's guest is Patricia. Patricia is a life coach, and a life coach is a huge thing. People depend on life coaches to get through difficult times in life as well as do well in their life. So, Patricia, are you a life coach or a quantum life coach?
Namaste, Krishna. Namaste, beloved master. Namaste, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm a quantum life coach and mentor because I bring the quantum principles into my work. And I'm here to collaborate with health, prosperity, happiness. And I work with people introducing the quantum worldview. And when they change their perspective, they also change their life. So, yeah, I'm a quantum life coach. You can say that.
All right. So, first, we will, because this is a subject, and we have been talking to a couple of people before the show, and they said, quantum parenting, come on, you will put quantum ahead of everything, quantum bus, quantum train, quantum light, and you'll get away with it. It's something fancy. But here, I would really like to understand from Dr. Goswami whether this phrase quantum parenting is really important or not.
Well, quantum physics is very important to understand human behavior. So far, as far as parenting is concerned, we have guidelines from cognitive psychologists. We have some guidelines from the psychology profession in general. And they talk mostly about the ego development and mostly about really cognitive development in terms of thinking. Quantum physics gives a very different story of what we are. We are not just a thinking type of people who uses the brain, and thinking is not such a marvelous thing to have. That is the focus of rearing a child. This really has to change. A child in quantum science is born with more in the traditional spiritual description fits the child better. It's born with quantum self. Quantum self is what in spiritual tradition is called the spirit. So a child is very spiritual. And the spiritual connection is what a mother, if she is connected to her child, feels. Um, and this is completely forgotten in the modern way of cognitive understanding of child development. This needs to be corrected. The child's development should crucially include the quantum self, how the quantum self is gradually replaced by the ego. Indeed, we need the ego to go along, get along with the world, but we also need the quantum self for creative changes. So quantum self should never be completely banished from a child nor from the adult's experience. This happens because of our very myopic way that today we grow a child. This also needs to be changed. And so, it is very important to recognize how to create appropriate room for quantum self. This will bring in the aspect of love, emotions, So there is much more to a child's development than just thinking. Cognitive development is the thinking, right?
So you are basically suggesting the vital parts of it, the feelings, the vital bodies that you talk about in your work, their proper alignment and the environment which encourages the proper development of the other vital characteristics of the child is very important. And that's how we can have a society with meaningful thoughts and eventually with generations of much evolved humans. Is that so?
Yes, and also creativity is much easier to access with vital connections. The quantum principles, like there is principle of oneness, non-locality. That's how the child feels with his or her mother. Yeah, that is a quantum property. You have to understand how that works and stay connected. Of course, mothers are naturally able to tune in the non-locality, signalless communication or oneness, as we call it. But to some mothers, it is a foreign concept. So they don't know about the concept, and that prevents them from acting properly in certain situations. With education, we can change that. And this is where we have in Patricia somebody who has active experience in it because she had a child herself, and she is a very good in parenting. We'll get it from the horse's mouth. I had children myself. Unfortunately, at that time, I was not privy to quantum thinking or quantum worldview. So my parenting was not up to par. And I am very personally interested in changing that for all future children.
Well, you are absolutely spot on. Men have this basic problem that we can never understand firsthand what it is like to have a child like a woman can. And Patricia is a proud mother. So we move on to Patricia. And our question is what Dr. Goswami says. You can tell more about us, but particularly on how do you see quantum parenting is going to help your own child?
Um, in the Newtonian worldview, the agency of change happens by force. In the quantum worldview, the changes happen by inspiration, by influence, by creativity. So this is how I raise my daughter. Valentina is 7 years, and we've been in a very interesting journey where I try to be very aware of her, what she's bringing with her, because the child is living more in the quantum self than in the ego, and she's very lively, creative, and I'm very aware. I don't want to close this door. I say that I'm like a guardian of the creativity because I want to give her space to be who she really is, to bring her essence out. And I'm here to guide her because I'm on this planet more time than her. So for practical things, I know more than her. But for spiritual things, she's more connected to the source than I am. So I believe that if we introduce the quantum principle in the child's education, we'll have a better world. Why? Because the kid's gonna grow up validating her inner self, understanding her inner kingdom, validating her creativity and her propensities from other lives. So she's gonna waking up her talents. She's gonna develop her gifts, and she's gonna be in her life in the direction of her dharma, her purpose. So this is what I'm very aware of. I want to be here to guide her in her life mission, but I don't want to impose things on her. I don't want to project myself on her. I want to respect her as she is. And we live in an entangled hierarchy. Sometimes I'm thinking about something she says, and this relationship between mother and child is very close. So entangle hierarchy, discontinuity, creativity, all the quantum principles we can bring inside the way we are raising our child and see them as a path to our enlightenment, because they are teaching a lot of things to us. And I'm very grateful for this.
Great, great. But Patricia, I have a question here. You say upfront that quantum, or rather, I'm sorry, Newtonian worldview does things with force, and
Yeah.
quantum is like choice, right? So you do not use the Newtonian worldview, but do you think that there could be a discipline issue that all the time, if there is choice?
Yes, you touch a very important point. It's much easier to take a child and say, please sit here. But it's a challenge to guide your child to sit there. So if we say that we are applying the quantum principles in the way we are raising our kids, we're gonna have to develop our patience because it's another way of working. It's another way of dealing. When you respect a child and you listen to her and you listen to what she want to say and you are present as a person, you're not doing things and listen, you're stopping, looking her in the eye and say, what are you feeling now? So what Dr. Goswami said about the vital body, it's like the child, the first years, the cognition is with the heart, then the mental is going to come. So it's very important to ask for your child, what are you feeling now? Are you feeling good here? And teach them to validate their feelings. Teach them, I teach my daughter, I say, what are you feeling now? Are you feeling we should go or not? So I'm raising her in this field that she should trust her feelings and also her intuitions. We talk about intuition, which is the supramental mind. So it's important to see our child not as a person that is going to come up in a society that is already built. They are the future. They are going to bring the new society. They are going to bring the new world. So we have to open this space for them. These kids, they are amazing. They are coming with a lot of creativity, with a lot of ideas. Sometimes my daughter surprised me, and it's supposed to be that way. She's supposed to surprise me. When she says something for me and she's being herself and she's bringing something new because she's connected to the source. She's in her quantum self most of her time. So I'm also learning with her. So I'm very open to this. I don't want to impose, but it's another journey. I mean, it's much easier to raise a child in a simple hierarchy. I say, you obey. But if you want to be entangled, like we are going to discover together, we are going to create our day together. So it's another way of living, and it's living flow because everything can be so much fun and joy and creative, and we see everything, even the challenge that we overcome in our daily lives, you can see as a creative opportunity, because if you have this lens, this quantum lens, like a quantum glass, you can see everything as a nice and interesting opportunity of learning something.
Great, great. Well, I have heard a few keywords from what you say. This is a very valuable discussion that you had. However, the thing is, the two of the things are creativity and intuition. Now, I would like to go to Dr. Goswami with a question that it is true that if the right kind of parenting is there, the quantum parenting, as we say, then the child will develop more creativity and will have more intuition. But the fact is that the world that we live in this world is largely Newtonian. So if people start to depend on the intuitions a lot, and if they do not uh, say go well with the Newtonian world, don't you think there could be a risk in future?
Well, one has to recognize that parents themselves are not educated in the quantum worldview. So there will be a learning period and there will be some confusion in that period. However, some of these things come to the mother, at least, very naturally. So we should not be too worried. So let's go over the four quantum principles that play a tremendous role in everything, especially in the child's upbringing. First of all, mother's capacity of staying connected. This is the property of non-locality, signal-less communication. Quantum physics allows this in addition to local communication capacity that everybody has. This communication people are not entirely unfamiliar with. This is what we call empathy, connecting from inside, being in the other person's shoes. Now you have to really do that with a child because child cannot express its needs. Only in distress child will cry out. But otherwise, how do you know the child is needing something? And mothers do know, sensitive mothers that is. And this non-locality is so important that the mothers really have to prepare for being a mother, even while the late stages of their pregnancy. Because it turns out, studies have shown that if the mother is unhappy, emotionally disturbed during the last few weeks of pregnancy, then that disconnection invades the child's experience as the child is born and is a contributing factor to autism. And this is easily preventable by taking care of pregnant mothers, keeping them happy all the time. Okay, that's how non-locality is important. Then, of course, Patricia pointed out very, very strongly this creativity, and this is the quantum principle of discontinuity. Discontinuity is not an easy concept to understand unless you have taken a creative quantum leap. Fortunately, it's going to surprise the watcher, listener. Now, all of us have taken such quantum leaps when we were children. When we, for example, the first time got the idea of how to read, that reading actually is making sense out of the sentences that we hear. They join together in something that makes sense. That takes a quantum leap to understand. So we are not that unfamiliar with the concept. That came with the aha surprise, if you can go that far and remember when you learned to read or when you got the idea of arithmetic in your head for the first time. And so this discontinuity is something, again, Newtonian objects cannot do. Newton's physics has no scope for it. But quantum physics has introduced it from the very beginning. And we have to bring that back. That is the basis of creativity. Quantum leaps of creativity is how we get our insights and also intuitions. So you're right in a sense, the intuition is not easy to be sensitive because you have to open up to new vistas of being, which we are lost. We are not completely unfamiliar with it. If we remember our childhood, that the current educational system is blocking us from this an experience or exposure to these quantum principles. That needs to be changed. Really, really needs to be changed. And the third one is most important too for quantum parenting. Again, Patricia mentioned it a lot. Simple hierarchy versus tangled hierarchy. Usual bringing up of a child is simple hierarchy. Parents tell the child what to do, like sit, child sits. That's a simple hierarchy. All the causal authority is at the level of the parents, not the child's. Now, coming from that to a tangled hierarchy, where really the child and the parent are both cause of each other, that is a very difficult thing to do. And initially, it would be very difficult. But once you get the idea of cooperation, that everything works much better if you get into a cooperative mode with the child. Now, of course, you know, this is the basis of another quantum aspect, quantum principle, which is fundamental to all of these principles, the principle of choice. In quantum physics, experience can come from potentialities for consciousness to choose from. So what in Newtonian physics is a force that causes change, in quantum physics what causes change is choice. And the child also has choice. And child has to understand that his or her choice counts. This is the most important part of parenting. This is what Patricia was telling initially, that the I never tell her to sit like that. I have to persuade her to sit. How do you make an environment in which the sitting will follow, but it would not follow because you are ordering the child to sit? That's a skill. Good parents will be able to do that. With a little bit of learning, every parent would be able to do that. So force has to be replaced by the principle of choice. And the child has to give him the choice rather than being told that you have to do this and you have to do that. And yet, this is the difficult part. Because we have quantum principle does not mean that we give up on the Newtonian principles either, because parts of life demands that there is continuity, not discontinuity. Not everything one can bring creativity in. Not everything one can bring empathy in. Sympathy is a connection that we have with a child in a natural way too. Our brain is built for that. There are mirror neurons via which we can see anybody in distress will give us automatically a signal in the brain that will make us sympathize. And that too plays a role. So Newtonian principles also have a role to play. Simple hierarchy has a role to play. And the trick of parenting, quantum parenting entirely, is really a balancing act. You have to balance the Newtonian principles and quantum principles. Spiritual traditions knew that. This is why spiritual upbringing help people to get over their Newtonian tendencies of conditioning. We have lost it now because the current worldview for many people is this idea of materialism. Matter is everything. And then matter in the bulk, of course, is Newtonian. Matter is quantum, explicitly quantum only at the submicroscopic level. Fortunately, we also have the subtle experiences, feeling especially, thinking to some extent, and of course intuition, which is totally quantum. It comes with non-locality, signalless communication. It's not sensory, it's extrasensory. But thinking is mostly continuous, mostly Newtonian. This is our problem. Thinking becomes quantum only when you take a creative leap. Feeling, on the other hand, with the heart is much more quantum than thinking. You cannot condition love, in other words. Quality of love is different. And mothers, of course, are very aware of it. And most mothers, as you know, are capable of loving, and that is the skill. Finally, I would like to mention one more thing, which is that every parent needs to be aware that quantum science and recent experimental data are legitimizing an old concept that came from the East, and therefore a little suspicious in the West, but it had really no color that it is Eastern or Western. Christianity also had the concept of reincarnation before it officially banished it because of politics. Reincarnation is the idea that we survive after death and are reborn. Why is this idea important? Because what is reborn is our character and habit patterns. So it is very important to recognize that every child already has some learned propensities that come from its previous lives. But they are propensities, they are possibilities, and the child has to manifest it, and the parent's duty is to trigger it. So the parent has to really notice the interest level of the child to the environment that the parent is creating. If the child is disinterested, that's another contribution to autism. Not only that, it also contributes to hyperactivity because the child finds nothing to absorb its mind. So if you want to keep a child healthy from these two scourge of modern culture, autism and hyperactivity, then you better pay attention to this idea of reincarnation. What is the remedy? You have to create different environments so that different aspects of a child's talent come to forth, come to activation. Howard Gardner, a famous educationist, he knew about it. He wrote a book called Multiple Intelligences. Intelligence is not just mental, IQ intelligence. Intelligence has many dimensions. And the child's talent, child's interest depends on you creating an environment that kindles that interest. So quantum parenting opens us to all these dimensions that are virtually ignored today worldviews, and this is what we are trying to awaken the listener viewer.
Well, in quantum parenting, we have heard about children, of course. Parenting is the umbrella, and mothers. But don't you think we are leaving out another very important element in this whole thing? The father?
Say it again. I lost something in what you
I
said.
say that we are talking about children, we are talking about mothers, but in the parenting piece, are we not leaving out another important element, the father?
Why give me riddle? Why don't you say what is missing? You say.
The father, I said, the father.
Yes, father is missing, and the reason is that fathers are less important. Fathers are also uh, important, but of course, it is a very difficult subject for fathers. One, they are not naturally connected to the child. The reason that mothers are naturally non-local with the child is because the child grew up in the womb of the mother. Now, my understanding is that with the exception of one father, all males are not privileged to hold a child in his, he doesn't have a womb, so question does not arise. So this is a problem. And this problem is exacerbated because the problem with most fathers is that they are kind of separate from their feelings. Fathers tend to suppress their emotions. This is common, especially in the Western world. In the East, they are not as suppressive, but still, compared to women, they are not tuned in the heart either.
Okay.
So
All right.
these are the problems, and therefore, for parenting father, you really have to go even deeper. So that's why we concentrated on the mother.
Okay, so we'll have one episode solely dedicated on fathers one day. But
Okay,
today,
that's
let
fair.
us call it, we are running out of time. Patricia, thank you so much. If you have one advice to give to any of the parents, one advice, right? In 30 seconds, you are most welcome.
Um, my advice is patience, empathy, authenticity, resonance. Um, the child does not copy what you say. The child copy, inspire, mirror what you are. So if you are present, your child is going to be present. If you are authentic being, your child is going to be authentic. If you are a loving mom or father, your child is going to be authentic. So
Great.
what you are is going to inspire your child. That's it.
Super.
Work,
Thank you. Dr.
work on
Goswami, any
yourself.
last word?
The last word, of course, is that quantum worldview is just a worldview that is being born, and you were really participating in it. We are living in a society where spirituality is very absent. Quantum worldview brings in an integration of science and spirituality. This is very important to recognize. So, what we are really saying is that look, pay attention to the spiritual dimension of child rearing. It's a dimension that will teach you about your own spirituality as well. So, there is tremendous benefit from learning good parenting.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you. And this is for our viewers. If we look at the discussion today, it is centered around how to raise a child. And that's a very, very important subject for a lot of people. Now, this is also a part of the program that we offer. So imagine what you get along with the degrees. You get to know how you raise your child too. And you can always visit our website. We have a fully accredited 2 years master's and 3 to 5 years PhD degree in association with a university in Jaipur, India, called University of Technology. So if you wish to know more about it, please visit our website www.amitgoswami.org or write us an email at info@amitgoswami.org. Now, this quantum parenting was really worth it, and it is something, quantum being an adjective, it means a lot of good things. So, our suggestion would be to dig deep and find out how you can do better in this area. Thank you so much, and we'll meet again next Friday.